you never heard of. Hey everybody, welcome to the Common Folk Podcast with Ben, Morgan, and Andy.
All right, we're back on.
We're rolling.
Yeah, let's get into it. This is kind of a fun topic, and it's so new and kind of out there. I think everyone has done this before, all your major universities in some way, shape, or form, but now there's a level of transparency added to it.
Yeah.
That's name, image, and likeness, NIL.
NIL.
I think this would be really interesting for you guys because you have a college athlete. Your daughter is a soccer player for Colorado State. So, there's some opportunities there now, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of crazy how all this is progressing and what things, athletes now can have and get. I mean, what is your take on all this? I feel like you know a ton about it with doing all your announcing and in the sports world. Right,
and trying to stay plugged in, and covering the collegiate baseball league, the Corn Belt League, all summer, Thursday night baseball over the station. I got to talk to a lot of these college athletes and the people that represent them or their agents, and it is just a straight up wild, wild west. And there has been some preliminary numbers that have come back, and somewhere like 88% of the monies that student athletes have been able to make, Division I level, after the first month of NIL has been through social media.
Yeah.
Whether that be selling hats or subscribing to their podcast, whatever the case may be, it's pretty much the lion's share has all been through social media. And I think that's different from what people thought was going to happen, and that is the Alabama quarterback's going to go down to the Chevy dealership and sign footballs for a couple Saturdays. That's probably going to happen, but that's not where they're making their money right now.
Did people really think that was going to? I guess I just would have thought social media would be the big thing. But
it's the quickest and it's the biggest turnaround. And there's a company out of Lincoln by the name of Open Doors, founded by some former Husker football players. And it's just turnkey. They just have to sign up for it. And now that gives you, the business owner, access to all these athletes that have signed up through this platform.
Okay.
And all you got to do is send them, say, okay, just wear my hat and tell people that they need to buy their hat if they want to be cool as you. And just have a light description, and then they put it on their Facebook, Twitter, whatever. They have a list of their mediums. And I'm sure there's going to be more platforms to follow.
Oh, there's got to be.
But this has been set up for a while now, and professional athletes have been using this. If they don't want to go through this guy or that guy or whatever, the service is set up. So there's a lot of college athletes that do it, especially in the Midwest, that are using this form. And I think everybody's on board that, man, they want the student athlete to be able to sell their own name, image, and likeness, NIL. But there's a lot of reservations that go with that. And I'm very curious as to what you guys think, because I feel your perspective might matter more than most, in that you do have a college athlete, but it's not a football player at a prominent school. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's really on the other side of it. So you're right in the middle of it, but you're not. You know what I mean? You're not in the limelight.
Yeah.
For me, to begin with, like you said, people were kind of speculating on what it would turn into. And I think just because of what we're involved in day to day with our business, 100% out of the gate, it was, of course, social media is going to drive their brands and their businesses. Their own individual businesses, their own individual likenesses.
Right.
I think a lot of those people probably already have done that, and that's the thing. So I'm not big on following a bunch of athletes and stuff like that on social media, but I can pretty much guarantee that we could go out there and find a bunch of college athletes.
Oh, yeah.
Prior to all of this, that have a very good presence and a very good following. So you can immediately monetize that.
The highest earner, and they wouldn't disclose it all, made $212, somewhere in the range of over $200,000 in 1 month through NIL. And I think the highest earner or who came out of the gates just blazing was a gymnast out of LSU. And, I mean, just a cute little gymnast.
Right.
But now has the power to sell her name, image, and likeness. So that's a success story, and you love to see that. But I am curious to see the fallout, too. Like, what do all of her teammates think of that? Because they're not knocking down $200,000 a month.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she won't every month, but still, that's a pretty good cash grab for a student athlete.
Especially when you're in college and you're
Yeah.
normally eating ramen noodles and...
No, not anymore.
There's so there's so many
dang
things
it, that
there.
was us.
I think there's always going to be something that people are not going to like about everyone else that they're around. So
Sure.
prior to this, it would have been like, oh well, her scholarship's so much better, or oh they always serve her first when we go to lunch, or
Right.
I'm sure it was always
Yeah.
something stupid. So there's always going to be something.
Okay. Now, I get that, and there's always going to be a rub, okay,
Yeah,
especially in
yeah.
team sports, even though
Yeah.
gymnastics is kind of an individual thing. But playing devil's advocate here, let's say I'm a football player, I'm a receiver, and I'm coming off a year where I almost had 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and I've been approached with all these deals. And I know that from month to month, it's contingent that I'm getting mine. I'm getting my yards, I'm getting my touches, I'm getting my touchdowns. And we get this new offensive coordinator that wants to run the ball, and the running back's like, finally, we're going to get some love. Well, I'm kind of pissed off now because I'm losing money as a college athlete. Just think of the friction that's going to cause,
Ooh.
in a
I didn't
locker
even
room.
think of that.
I just think you're going to see some really wild stories that wouldn't have been there in the past, and I'm right, wrong, or indifferent. I agree with you, Ben. There's always going to be a friction there, but now that you're throwing a possible $200,000 out of my pocket on top of that, I think you're
When you
really
add
going to see.
money in the mix of
Yeah.
most things,
Yeah.
oof, could
Yeah.
get ugly.
I agree that money will heighten the tension, but I guess I want to believe that prior to all this existing, just that pride and that drive and that wanting to perform and wanting to be in the spotlight and all that would have drove a lot of that tension anyway,
Sure.
if that scenario
Okay.
came around.
And I was playing devil's advocate, and I think you're right there, but I do believe you're going to see some cases, especially on teams that aren't winning.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
the bowl game's not out there, or we're not going to make the playoffs or get invited to this invitational. So it's all about me now. Like my star has to shine. And if we're not going to win anyway, why are we trying to run the ball?
Yeah.
If we're not going to win the game
Yeah.
anyway. So
I think to kind of like boil it down a little bit or take it to some basics, a lot of people that you talk to prefer to watch college sports over pro sports. And you got to ask, like, why is that the case? And I've got some feelings on that, but like if you just think about that up front, what would you think someone would say? Like, why is that the case if they really thought about it?
Well, because I'm part of that team. I'm an alum,
Yeah.
I'm not I never was a professional athlete, so I'm not invested in that pro team like I am the university that I went to. I think that's just right off the cuff. That's where my mind goes.
I think that totally makes sense. What I was thinking, though, was the kind of the connection that the viewer has with the player, which is also kind of what you're saying, the college player as opposed to the pro player. And I think a huge part of that is the income. And a lot of these pro players, especially the ones that get all the hype, they're making a lot of money.
Sure.
And it changes who they are, and it makes them act in a certain way, and it becomes repulsive in one way or another to a lot of people. So then a lot of people are like, man, I want to watch these college kids play, man. They're just out there,
Yeah.
Having fun, working hard.
just
Yeah.
grinding it out, learning how to live life, having to work for absolutely not that pro players don't have to work, of course they do, but they're making a lot of damn money.
I think, though, and I had this discussion with my father a few weeks ago. His professional baseball team, they had high hopes this year, the Minnesota Twins. They were supposed to win the division. They were a favorite to win the division, then make the playoffs and all that good stuff. And right out of the gate, they did poorly, really bad. and then one guy got hurt. So then the next guy got hurt.
Yeah.
And then you have a huge injury list where everybody's on what used to be called the DL. Now they're on the IL injury list, and they just can't seem to get right, you know? And I think that's the disgust or the disdain we have with some of these pro athletes. When they know it's not in their best interest to go out there and play ball, they're making millions and millions of dollars anyway, so they don't even care. So they don't care about the team. They don't care about the fans. It really boils my blood when a guy will get invited to play in an all-star game, and I don't care if it's the NBA or MLB, whatever, and they turn it down or they piss and moan about it. It's like, that used to be an honor. You should be honored that kids are voting on you, grown-ups are voting on you to see you play an exhibition game just to show us how good you are. And you're scoffing at it because you're not making enough money to go play in that or perform. Like, it really, I mean, I'm wearing kind of, my heart on my sleeve here, but it pisses me off.
Yeah.
It does. And yeah, there is that fear that college athletes will go down that path if they're making this type of money. And Nick Saban had already said their starting quarterback this year, he's a new guy, underclassman. He hasn't started a game for Alabama, and he's already made over $1 million or rated $1 million in endorsements.
Oh, my gosh, really?
Isn't that crazy? A kid, whatever he is, 19, 20 years old, and he's already got $1 million just in his back pocket. Wow.
And to go back to that, I want to be fair. I think it's like anything else. A couple of bad apples ruin the bunch. Mm-hmm. And it's not like this with all pro athletes, but there's a number of them that do act in those certain ways, and then it makes people feel that way. In college, you just don't get that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, being at the level that I am of a fan, and I would imagine people that are really into it, mm-hmm. That's got to be a big part playing, because what happens when these kids start making millions of dollars and they're just like,
mindset
they
changes.
start wearing stupid shit and doing weird videos and, and it's like, what the heck is going on here, man?
It is going to happen to a certain extent. And you already see, even with the definition now, they're not allowed to promote certain entities or business,
mm-hmm.
Gambling, alcohol, pornography, which, so once again, since you're a student athlete, I'm going to think for you. I'm going to handcuff you here. I mean, I think if you're 21, shoot, if you're 18, I don't care. Isn't it a free country? If I want to say a word for Coors Light or Busch Light, I should be able to do that.
Yeah.
But even in this new documentation, the NIL, they're telling kids that
they still have a little
so
hold on that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we're just trying this out. And that's one thing that a lot of folks are going back and forth with, not jumping in on, is how vague this definition really is that came down from the Supreme Court. I mean, I've talked to agents where they're like, we have no idea what we can do, but we are jumping in with both feet.
So is it more or less they're doing things and then asking for forgiveness if something?
Don't even have to ask for forgiveness right now.
Okay.
Because there's so much gray. Just go for it.
And there's probably so much going on that, what are they catching? What are they not?
Yeah. Do you think they're going to tighten things up?
I mean, that's the, I don't know if fear is the right word. That's the fear. So everyone's just coming out guns blazing, getting in on it.
Okay.
The center for the Huskers, Cam Jurgens, they always called him Jerky or something like that. So he came out with Cam Jurgens Jerky. He has his own beef jerky company. And from what I've seen, it's doing fairly well. He wears his own little promoting jerky hat during his post-practice interviews. And what the hell? Why not? I really am. I know I seem like an old fuddy-duddy or like I'm on the opposite end. But no, I think these kids should be able to market themselves and sell themselves. And God damn it, if you have the gumption to get out there and promote yourself and sell a product that you will stand behind, go for it.
That's going to take some work and drive.
It is.
It's like, again, I mean, kind of starting a business, but you're starting a brand.
Nebraska volleyball player, the minute that this got passed, she opened her own clothing line.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so and I credit the young lady like that. That's awesome. Like, you're into fashion. She's always wearing fashionable clothes. Nice looking gal. Go for it. But there you have it. Man, is that going to create a rub in the locker room where you were already the pretty one? Now you have your own clothing line that you're catching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, man, I could really see some what you would think would be really good teams get split, especially if early in the season things don't go your way or you drop a couple games you probably shouldn't have. Whose fault is it? Of course, it's the guy that's knocking down $200,000 or something. You know what I mean?
I think we talk about the big hits like that, the hundreds of thousands of dollars and stuff like that, because that's what you're going to see and that's what you're going to hear about.
Sure.
But I think there's some realities, if we go back to our daughter as an example, and if I understand all this correctly, so her being a D1 athlete at Colorado State, so now she could go to the community and take like some soccer programs that are youth soccer programs in the area because she plays soccer, and they could recruit her for her likeness, for her time she's putting in at the university and so on and so forth, and use her name and come to the program and say, hey, here's who we've got here this week. She's going to come out. She's going to do some training. She's going to kind of show you how universities work, blah, blah, blah. And she can make some money off of that. And that's small-time stuff that you're never going to hear about. Mm-hmm. But those are kind of things that can really make difference for college kids.
Yeah.
To make those few bucks.
Communities and kids growing up, looking up to.
So some of those first month results that came back, and I'm sure a little bit it's inflated because it's new, and so everyone's going to give it a shot. But your average, just the average mean there just over $400 per athlete. So like your daughter, had she thrown her hat into the ring there, she probably would have made around $400 off this, that, or whatever. I'm interested to see because EA Sports football, NCAA football, remember that? I mean, they were egregious how they would rip off a player's name, image, and likeness and not pay him a dime, right? It all just went to the NCAA, and then we find out, well, what does the NCAA do? And then we're like, we don't know what we do. I don't know, charge people money? I don't know. But will your daughter get a check from EA Sports, even if it's only $20, $40? But, I mean, all athletes should be getting a cut of that now because they are just straight up now football, basketball, and I bet there's a soccer game coming out too.
Yeah.
And I bet, your daughter would be on it if EA can produce that quick enough, while she's still in school and all that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be something to that, and I think it's a lot of those smaller things that's really good for these kids. And there's some things you were talking about earlier. I was thinking about this. You said, well, it's ramen noodles, at home every night, and so on and so forth. There's something to that. Like the kids need to go through that.
Yeah, I think you learn a lot.
I mean, we moved her into an actual house a couple of weeks ago. Where 4 girls are staying, and they're all going to try to have to figure their stuff out. She's pumped as she can be going in here like it's the first her own place, that they're renting, their own space to stretch their legs and do their thing. We're walking around as being adults looking at this going, oh, man, there's this and there's that and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, my God, the carpet.
It's going to be a train wreck.
Yeah. But the thing is that they got to go through that because those are the things that need to happen.
But even previously before that, she was in an apartment. And before that, the dorms. I mean, they're old. Like even, again, it's like Lincoln. I mean, some dorms are fancy and new swanky, but.
I'm just saying my point is that they need some of this grind.
Yeah.
It builds character.
And not have a $200,000 paycheck coming to you in month one.
Yeah. They need to experience that. And she has put in time in college so far of having a job outside of school and the team
sports.
To be able to pay for her stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're marketing your own NIL, that's going to be a job in and of itself. I mean, we know how it is trying to run social media and stuff like that. So that's still a job. So I would promote that. But the point is that they got to grind it out. Like they got to learn some of that stuff at that level.
Yeah.
To really appreciate once things start happening.
So I think some of those kids are going to miss some of that. Like,
well, they are.
They're going to get the paycheck that their parents never even got.
I think the ones that it's really going to hurt are your blue chippers, your 5-star recruits that are going to come in with a lot of, hoopla and press. And there's thousands and thousands of these kids in football and basketball, that I follow. Even in baseball, just a pitcher, a flamethrower, he's already in high school and he's already, throwing 86, 87. And they just kind of flame out, and it's nothing against them. There's only 2% of your, student population are going to make it pro in any sport.
Yeah.
So it's unfair that these expectations are being put on these kids anyway when they're 16, 17, heading off for college. But they're going to sign, like you said, a deal for $200,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're not going to pan out, and they're just going to become the butt end of a joke. And they're going to have this false sense of reality.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just showed up. It's like, oh, no, you
That's
didn't.
actually,
You're the freshman.
You actually have to put in a little more effort than just always showing up to. I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot. This is layered.
Yeah, it really is.
Getting into what you're saying, Ben, I never really thought about it that way with,
building character.
Yes, building character
whole...
and things getting handed to you. And not that this is not getting, they're working for this, right?
Well,
for these deals. And
I don't know.
Or is it that they came from high school and they were just large, huge recruits, and they really haven't even shown themselves. Some of them could be freshmen right now, right? Like they haven't even stepped foot on the field, on the court, and they're already making this money.
Yeah, so even before NIL, you already had, basketball players, and we're talking top of the line here, that's obviously where a lot of focus goes to, but they would take off their senior season just so they wouldn't risk getting injured. And it's like, so here we have a kid that hasn't played basketball since he was 16, but now he's, and he's the good, so he's going to Duke or North Carolina, whatever, and he's going to have the opportunity to sign some of these big NIL deals, and he's probably, if you play the odds, he has just as good odds as flaming out or not reaching that pinnacle as he is to make it. And I think that, kind of to your point, Ben, that could be damaging. Like this should be a time in your life where you do build character. You do figure out oh man, I'm just a freshman. I need to put in the time, figure this out. And instead, I'm worried about selling Ray-Bans on my fucking Twitter handle or whatever.
Yeah.
So, it's just the Wild West right now, and I do think I heard a good one on the radio earlier today. Not regulated, but monitor. They need to monitor. What does monitor it mean?
Yeah.
Come on.
Hall monitor?
No,
come on.
It's going to be regulated. We're going to see regulation come down, but I think more than anything, this is straight up a kind of a test time to see what happens, see the fallout, and then whether that's 5 years down the road, 1 year down the road, changes will be made. And I'd be interested. I would love for us to get an agent or even an athlete on here that has kind of dipped their toes in it to get their perspective, because I'm sure they know more than I do. All I know is from what I read, in newspapers and on blog sites and everything else, and from what I hear on the radio and from what I hear, from people that I talk to within the business. So, I'm sure there's a lot happening that I don't even know.
Yeah. Oh, there's got to be.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of folks that we know that I'm sure we can get on here eventually to chat about that a little bit, and I'm curious as well. I think these things, they all start from somewhere. Like this didn't just come out of nowhere. Like it came out of some kind of necessity. And for me, when you boil it down, it's a matter of what a lot of these universities and colleges have done over the years to take advantage of the likeness of these players.
Yeah.
And that's what drove this, is that I think it made a lot of people mad, saying, look at this school making all this money.
Yeah.
And, my kid or me or whoever the person is that's talking about this, I'm not making a thing. I'm just out here grinding it out. And I think that's if you boil it down, if they would have just fixed that problem, because you can go into these schools and you can talk about 100 things of what coaches are getting paid and the amount of money that's coming through universities and on and on and on, and it's a lot of it's ridiculous.
Oh, sure, but I feel like a good coach, whether it be football, basketball, college volleyball, they're worth it. They're worth every penny because of the money that generates.
Yeah.
So I get it. Like, how ridiculous. A guy's making $1 million to tell someone to go tackle a guy. You know, like, I get it.
Yeah.
But, man, if he's good at doing that, he's worth every penny. Now, along those lines, there are some really good feel-good stories that are coming out, and one that has come out is BYU. And I kind of debriefed you guys on that.
Yeah.
That's where a huge donor, a company of the university that has ties to BYU, came out, and all 36 walk-ons of their football team, they straight up paid for their tuition.
That is sweet.
So that basically their entire team now is on a full ride scholarship. So, yeah, that is awesome. That is really cool. And that, I feel like that kind of puts the warning out there to everyone else. Well, here's the bar now.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
What can your donors do?
Yep.
So a bar has kind of already been set, and the football season at this point right now, as we're talking, hasn't even started.
What's crazy to me, though, is I think about the backside from a business standpoint, and what does that really mean? You know, so that company has paid for those kids to go to school, and so was it just a donation that they did, or like what do they stand to gain? And if that's the case, why couldn't they have done that before? You know what I mean?
All right, well, that's amazing you said that, because here's where I was going to go. I heard, well, that's what they were doing before. Now it's just being brought to the light.
Yeah.
You know, now it's not, we don't have to jump through all these hoops. We don't have to give the money to the university or a runner or some scum bucket that's going to try and figure out how to give it to the kids and hope that the kids use it correctly. Now it's just straight up this protein bar. It's a protein bar out of Utah, is just straight up able to give the money to the kids directly, to the athletes.
They just cut the check.
Yep.
And I'll tell you
Straight
from
to
a
them.
business standpoint, and I don't know this for a fact, but based on how we've run our business and what I've learned about accounting, and I try to keep all this in the accountant's hands because I'd screw it up. But now that company is allowed to say, we have an advertising expense.
Right.
As opposed to we're doing a donation.
Yeah.
And
So is that like a better write-off?
the way I understand it, an advertising expence works better on your P&Ls and at tax time.
All right.
Okay.
As far as how you want to put the numbers together.
Yeah.
So there's some of that stuff that's going on. So it's like, you know, you got to look at some of that stuff and kind of think, all right, what's, you
Is
know,
it kind of a write-off depending how
what
big
are we
they are?
what are we really doing here? Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Well, yeah, a smart businessman's not going to do that and not gain something from it too.
yeah, and then the schools, like what would be the school's motivation to take that product, whatever that company is that they're advertising? I don't remember who you said the company was.
Is it
A protein bar.
Yeah.
Protein bars.
Yeah.
And
Built bars.
the school talk about it at all. They have no motivation to talk about it
No,
at
they
all
don't.
because they're not getting a dime.
Nope.
So if he can get some of those players to talk about it, like on their social media and so on and so forth,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, I mean, that helps.
Well, I mean, this was a big splash deal, and obviously the university was on board with it because the release came over their social media channels, and they did it like after post-practice or during a meeting or something like that when they did the reveal. And on your second part of the question, the payoff for that, just on a strict business scale, not saving taxes, not a write-off or anything like that, I feel like every high school in Utah now, those kids are going to be buying Built Bars or whatever that brand is.
Oh,
like, there's
totally.
no way. And even if I'm a fan of BYU, which they are national-wide, they're a nationwide brand, I feel like if you're an alum or you follow that team, that program, and there's two types of protein bars, you know, at
It's a
the gas station,
Feel good, like you feel good about that.
Of-
Yeah, you're going to get that.
of course I'm going to buy
Yes,
that brand. Even if I'm
absolutely.
not a BYU fan, I'm even like, man, I think that was pretty cool that you did that. So there's a,
What was the brand
know,
again of the
I think it's Built Bars.
Built Bars?
Yeah.
Oh, God, we might have had those before. Are those in grocery stores?
Oh, they're so good. No, I don't.
Wait, are they in grocery stores or is it just a Utah thing?
I bet $50. I've never had one.
Oh, okay. I'm not betting you. You don't really eat protein bars.
Nope.
We eat a lot of
should
them.
have.
And yeah, exactly. Andy, do you?
It's Built Bar. Yeah, Built Bar Company.
Let me see the logo
Let's
on that
see here.
computer.
They pull up their kind of creepy looking mascot, but he's a good dancer if you ever been
Oh,
BYU. The Cougar.
okay.
He's got some
Yes, I know what
moves.
you're talking about.
Yeah, like, sorry,
Scary.
there he is.
Oof.
let's
Okay, Built
see.
Bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we may just have to get some. So
Yeah.
that is cool. But to your point, yes, if I saw a few bars sitting there,
Right.
knew the story.
I feel like that's a brilliant move for them, especially if they're at the point where they're going to be dropping $200,000 in advertising anyway, or they need a tax write-off or a blend of both. Like that's a great way to move it. And that's their clientele. That's who they're looking for, is athletes, especially younger athletes looking to play collegiately. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's a better source of advertising or way to spend your money if you have the capabilities, and that's the point that you're at as a company. Something like that, big splash move, and God dang it, you feel good for those football players.
And I'm sure there's tons of those stories. I mean, this is just one, but God, I like hearing that.
And that's and I heard the skeptical guy saying those things are already happening. It's just now that
they're coming out.
Yeah, everyone
They can
gets to
say
see
it.
it. And
Yeah.
So
It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out and like when they start trying to lock down things and
There's-
what moves
yeah,
things, I don't know.
There's a lot of companies that have a lot of money to spend and need to spend it from a marketing standpoint, from an their advertising budgets. And this will definitely come into play for them. For us, we're, the arena that we're in, where we deal with this merchandising and social media and those types of things, there's a lot of hay to be made there.
oh yeah.
And there's already, you talked about some folks getting involved in that.
So an idea just shot through my head, and you can see I brought my idea book here.
Oh, yeah.
I told some guys, if you ever catch a hold of some of my old ones, just please don't open it. There's some scary stuff in there. I'm not saying all my ideas are good. In fact, they're probably mostly bad. But okay, let's go back to your guys' daughter, collegiate D1 soccer player at a great program. Colorado State's no joke. The Rams, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Rammies.
what? Okay, yeah. Should do.
Gotta
But
put up the fingers.
is that like the frog from TCU?
Well, I don't know. You got to bend the pinky
They're all
and
kind
the
of the
pointer
same.
finger.
It just depends on the angle
So
that
it looks
you
like
get.
the ram.
All right,
Oh.
dude.
I don't think they but-
Does the competition, do the other teams in the conference, do they do horns down?
Oh,
how
like they're dead?
Well, like how
Oh.
they mock Texas, the horns down.
Oh,
deal.
probably. I don't know.
No, I would never do that. I've always been a Rams fan.
I knew you were.
Anyway,
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
anyway, back where the hell were we?
I don't know.
No,
What
but
were you saying?
I think it would be something to explore. Like, let's say your daughter comes out with a brand called like Kick Back, where it's all about self-defense for young women, and she's a collegiate soccer player, and you guys have the backing. You guys do merchandising, and you can have Kickback T-shirts, Kickback hats, all this stuff, and then throw the caveat out there that all these monies, or most of these monies, are going to go to college athletes that have been affected some way to bullying or this or that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To women that have been affected in some way, shape, or form, where they needed to quote unquote kick back.
Okay.
Man, I feel there's just so many opportunities out there and it doesn't matter what college they go to, if they want to get creative enough
Yeah.
with it
If
and they want to go after it. And like you said, Ben, a turnkey way to do it is the merch,
Yeah.
But they got to be all in too. I mean, I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
not just doing it just to make a dime.
Well,
But yes, to your point,
I would think you would want to
merch, hats, all of it.
you get
Huge.
Colorado State involved, and you get a couple other teams involved in the conference. Then you get a couple other teams outside of the conference. Like that, it could be a national thing, and you, by no fault of your own, you were just the first to figure it out, and it was a good idea or whatever, and it just rallies. You never know what's going to hit.
Yeah.
So I do think we're going to see some really neat and cool stories like that, and that are going to a good place where that is supporting organizations that
Good
are dealing,
causes,
good
yes.
causes.
Yeah.
So, something that you touched on there that I think is also an important thing is the fact that these kids, they don't know, they haven't been through this, they don't know what they don't know and what they're getting themselves into, and I think there's a lot of companies. I mean, inevitably, there's going to be a lot of them that are going to take advantage of that,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
sure.
they're probably going to make them look like fools.
Yeah.
So how do they combat that? I mean, with life experience, by the time you start talking about these pro players and what they've been through, they've at least got a better grasp on that. But most of them have agents,
Right.
and a lot of these college kids don't. So does that increase that market. Now,
Yeah.
would it be smart? Is there more of a need for agents
Oh, I think so.
to help
Yeah.
just protect them?
Yeah.
From doing something stupid, from getting involved in something dumb that's going to come back to them down the road.
I mean, I've heard a lot of cases where a lot of high school kids are already talking to agents because it's already, now it's legal. And why wouldn't you? If your son or daughter has a chance at making it in D1 and there's some interest there, and he's already been doing interviews with the local newspaper and this or that, why wouldn't you want to get an agent just for what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And
Help
I think,
protect it.
the agents probably are now, again, like you said, helping these college kids or about, to start college.
Right.
But what is I don't know. I just keep thinking, I mean, what's the fallout on that? Like, what's the risk for the agent on that? They haven't even gone pro.
And I almost feel like maybe this is back to what we were saying. Everything that was already being done somehow, some way, is now being just brought to light and being allowed to do. Even though you couldn't talk to an agent, you'd have to talk to a representative or whatever the case may be. And that's not the case now. You can actually just straight up talk to an agent, not have to worry about it, and go to dinner with the agent. And it's just all out on the table. There's no runner. There's no middleman. There's no uncle that's going to get caught in the middle and muck it all up. So in that regard, I feel like there probably is a lot of good things that are coming from this. It's just like a lot of things where there's so much money on the table, you get worried. And I think that's where I'm at with it. And I don't want to be a pessimist or a worried type of guy, but man, you can see that there's going to be problems. And what the hell? There's always
they're just young kids. I just keep thinking.
Yeah. So I'm
Hopefully
probably
the parents step in.
Yeah.
Right? You
Yeah.
know?
There's good parents out there everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
So I don't know. I think there's a lot more worry and things being blown out of proportion, and we're focusing on like the 2 or 3% of the high earners when really we should be talking about, your offensive linemen that are never going to be in the limelight. Like, how's this going to affect them?
Yeah.
How's this going to help them? How's this going to help your basketball team? If you're not a basketball school, but you still have a basketball program, how does that help those guys or change what they do? That's probably going to be the more fascinating story that really comes out of all of this, 5-10 years down the road.
For sure, how it's going to help those folks, and I think what it's going to do to the university's budgets, because it has to pull money from that. I mean, They're going to be moving money from the school to the kids.
Right.
So how is that going to look here in a few years once that starts working its way through?
So then the colleges aren't getting as much funding for actual programs themselves.
I mean, depending on who you are and what you're selling and what you're trying to do, why not just go straight to the player?
Yeah. I mean, that's who people are listening to. That's who people are interested in anyway.
Yeah.
And it might kind of send things back to where we kind of want it to be anyway. Like, would anyone really be tore up if tuition went down?
Right.
No, but isn't that the risk, though, then, too? Again, you're putting your money on some athlete rather than that college isn't going anywhere. That athlete could go somewhere.
Yeah, but the
they
thing
could
is that
get hurt.
there's
They
a
could
potential,
transfer.
There's a potential for your money to go further when you're at the source. So
it's the risk. Like, which risk
well,
do
there's
you want?
risk either way, yeah. I mean,
But
if you're giving money to the university and you're hoping that the university is going to advertise for you and that they're going to make the kids, drink your product or whatever it is, talk about it, hopefully that happens, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, whatever. But your dollars are going to be worth more when it's going straight to the person that you're asking to do it.
Right.
If they go ahead and do it.
I mean, there were some really just gross stories coming out like from the late 80s and early 90s where like Nike or Reebok, whatever shoe brand, we'll say shoe brand A, made a deal with the coach and said, all right, you're going to wear a pin on your suit for every game, and you're going to make your team buy our sneakers, and they got to buy A, B, or C brand. And these kids had to buy those sneakers out of pocket. And, there's a few players that couldn't afford it. And that story, of course, hit the local papers and this and that. And it's like, oh, how could Nike or how could Reebok do this? And yeah, it is. It's pretty screwed up when the coach is signing a $300,000, $600,000 at the time type of dollar deal to force these kids to buy shoes that they can't even afford.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a PR nightmare, and I'm sure there's going to be more to come out, but this is why you made a great point early on there, Ben, where this whole NIL deal all came about due to factors like that, where it was just taken advantage of, so much so to where it was so ugly, where people are like, this just doesn't make sense and it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Kids should be able to market themselves. Students, people should be able to take responsibility for their own name, image, and likeness.
And I think the bottom line is that I 100% agree with that. And then they have to 100% take on the obligations that they have to the job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, now that they have skin in the game, there could be a lot of good things that come from that.
And what the school and the team is requiring of them, they have to stay focused on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because most of these kids, the ones that are going to be getting paid, especially the ones in the limelight, are on full scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the school is paying them to be there in one way or another.
Right.
They can't forget about that. That's job number one.
Yep. Yeah, so in an actual good way, this could really help everyone's focus go up. You know, like I just said, the kids have actual skin in the game. You know, they don't have that resentment like, oh, the university is making all this money on me and off of me, and I don't get anything out of it. No, here you go. You get as much as you want to, work for or have the opportunity to get. Go get it.
Yeah. Yep.
But it is another probably job in itself.
It is.
So
Totally.
Yeah.
let's see if they can do it.
Yeah,
Some will, some won't.
The fallout and what we learn here within the next year, 5 years, 10 years is going to be fascinating. I really want to, if I could ever push a fast forward button, and wish my life away,
Yeah.
I would kind of like to just see what the heck's going to come of all this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, definitely interesting, and it'll be something that we'll revisit for sure because this is very, we're very early in this thing right now.
Yeah.
Because when did this all come out? I mean, it was...
Oh, it got passed
a month ago? If
Yeah.
that?
Yep. Yeah, about a month ago
was it
at this point in time. Yeah.
July?
Mm-hmm.
Did it?
There's a month worth of data that got
Produced.
released a few days ago, and it was over the first month of earnings, and so that's where that $200,000 mark came from. I think the highest earner made $212,000 in 1 month.
I know for us and our business and what we're doing with branding and merchandising and design and on, it's something that I'm sure that we'll probably get involved in one way or another.
Sure.
So, we'll have more stories to tell and kind of how all that's working, but
I'm interested. I want to tune in.
yeah, it's a new horizon.
It sure is.
All right. Well, you guys got anything else or what?
No, that's it.
Put a pin in it.
Yeah.
I've been here
shut
long
your
enough
mouth.
today.
Get out of here.
All right. Well, let me just do this one real quick.
Ha-ha.
That's about it. All right.
That's a good sign. Yep. Cha-ching. Catch you later.
See ya.